Hi, welcome back to the UK Medical Freedom Alliance. My name is Ian Humphreys, and this is our broadcast number 15, I believe. So we are starting to get through them now, and I'm very, very pleased to say that I've got two smashing guests today. So it's the first time we've ever had two guests at once, so this is going to be a technical miracle for me, so I'm really looking forward to that. We're going to be talking to Nicky Adolphe and John Rogers from the Autonomy Hotline, and those of you that know UKMFA well will know that John is also one of our directors, so we've got a bit of skin in that game as well, if you like. So before we go on with the broadcast, there's our usual little bit of housekeeping, which is basically please do visit our website ukmedfreedom.org, where you can make a donation if you wish, and there you will also find out about our campaigns and our open letters, etc., and all the services that we provide. But today we're going to concentrate on the Autonomy Hotline and the services that they provide. Their website, I'm pleased to say, is the autonomyhotline.org. They also have a phone number, which is, and I'm going to give this out now before we get in case we forget to do it later. This is 0333 772 1227. That's 0333 772 1227. Email autonomyhotline at protonmail.com. I always say that one wrong. Autonomyhotline at protonmail.com. We're going to be talking about a lot of different services that the organisation provides, probably some of the services that we also provide where they cross. And we're first going to bring on our fellow director, which is John Rogers. Hello, John. How are you?
Hi, Ian. Thanks very much for inviting us and to have this. It's strange being in both because I'm obviously a director of Autonomy Hotline. I'm a director of the UK Medical Freedom Alliance, but also a volunteer with the Autonomy Hotline. And it was actually the UKMFA which introduced me to Nicky Adolphe probably 2 years ago now. It's a while.
Right. Okay.
A while ago. And the beauty of it is there's a lovely synergy between the more global and how do we approach these issues of ethics and how people are treated by other services in a more global way, and with the UKMFA, and the more personal touch of the Autonomy Hotline, which deals with individuals one at a time and really listens to their particular stories and helps them. So
it's a lovely synergy there, isn't there?
There's a lovely synergy. And just briefly, I'm a retired NHS GP. I was a GP for 35 years. And I came back out of retirement in 2020 with all the businesses that went on at that stage, and became interested in medical ethics and in helping people who were finding that the services they were being offered and the events around them were making lives very difficult for individuals. And so I was doing all I could to help with that.
And I understand you also wandered around making your own videos on Facebook.
Yes. Yeah, I my Facebook Live, until they started, the sound started disappearing from them, and my voice was replaced by a bzzz. So I think, there came a time where my Facebook Lives were of limited value, but I did over 100 of them over the course of 2 years, and had a small but loyal following, which was lovely. So yes, and I was talking about just the news as what was happening and my take on it.
Great. Okay. Well, let's bring our other guest in. Let's bring Nicky in. Hello, Nicky.
Hi, thank you so much for letting me come today, Ian.
No, it's our pleasure. It really is. We've been so looking forward to this, and it's been taking a while to actually get us all together in one place, but we've finally achieved it, which is great. So, Nicky, how did you get to meet John?
So I came on board with the UKMFA. I can't actually remember why, but I had some connections with the natural health movement way before. It goes way back. And I think I got slotted in quite quickly. I have a master's in medical ethics, so I think that was one of the things I could bring to the table, I guess. And I met John in one of those early meetings, and at the time, I had my own case going on. My brother is severely autistic, and they were bringing that to the courts. We were talking about how that may have been. John, you may want to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know how much to bring in of this, but we were talking about how the doctor there was very pro-vaccine, to be able to bring that to court, and John may have felt at one point in his life and his career that would have been the decision that perhaps he may have made, but recently has turned around. And I think we just had such a precious moment, sharing our views, and it just brought a real strong friendship. So it was after that, it was in May 2021, so a bit later on, that the hotline came to me weirdly in a dream. Actually, I had a dream. There was a picture poster on the wall of this building, the Autonomy Hotline, and I kind of just knew that was something I meant to do. And slowly, it's been building up from there. Some of the medical cases, we've been privileged enough to have John Rogers on board for those. But yeah, so it started right back in 2020 with that amazing, powerful sharing that we had. And it's been brilliant. It's been absolutely brilliant since then.
I don't know if the temperature dropped in the room, but I got a real shiver then. So I'm more leaning towards the fact that was meant to be. Yeah, absolutely. So how did you get it started? What was it, just from home and and then spreading the word?
Yeah, so it was just me with a handful of people, really. I had my master's in medical ethics. I actually did my dissertation on the family courts. Long story, I had a brush with the courts a few years back with my youngest daughter. Hideous experience, absolutely hideous. Opened my eyes to what was going on. And then a few years later, I did my master's and decided to research the family court more heavily. And at that same time was COVID. So I was doing medical ethics in COVID. It was crazy to watch that unfold. But the stories of the family court and the injustice that was going on was absolutely terrifying, shocking, unbelievable. If people knew what was really going on, it was just hideous. And it was far worse than what I had experienced, to be honest. Far worse. A lot of stories of domestic abuse, but the collusion between the state services and what might happen in domestic abuse is one of the most profound things that came out of the study. So I continued to support some of these people, as well as joining sort of the UKMFA at that time, the people that had come to me for the research. So I had my kind of clients, but they weren't clients at the time. They were just kind of acquaintances that needed a bit more support. This kind of then I had the dream, as I said, with the Autonomy Hotline, and kind of the idea of having a helpline for people that have facing some kind of what I would call coercive power, and have that quite a wide remit, because not only were I dealing with family court issues, but also stuff with COVID, and just people coming to me because of the medical ethics background, asking me questions, my experience with natural health for like nearly 20 years now. So I didn't need to advertise all that much. People came to me anyway. So gradually, just working from home, a couple of days a week, sitting down, talking to people online, I developed kind of methods for listening and analysing, which grew to the service it is now. So it's taken a couple of years of just really, it was listening. It was just listening to people's stories and trauma, and being able to be there for whatever step they wanted to take next, but also to say, I've heard however many stories of this might be your best option, creating some kind of plan that they feel comfortable with. And it's been a real privilege to start from there. And then I had a couple of more people. So obviously John Rogers, and then I've got this other wonderful colleague called Sarah Holdway, Sandy and Lauren, and just slowly, bit by bit, it's just grown and grown. And I've probably got about 20 volunteers now. I would say we're edging up to 200 cases.
Can I just stop you a second there? So, when it comes to medical ethics, you said you did an MA in medical ethics. So, is that something that doctors do on a general basis? Do all doctors do cover medical ethics as part of their training?
John could answer that one, but I think it's a cursory part of it. It is included, but not a full master's level.
Yeah, I mean, yes, certainly. It's covered as part of our the whole basis of consent, informed consent. We had talks on it. We had examples of it. We were tested on it as part of our final degrees and so on. That we did listen to people, identify what their needs were, share with them, and together with the patient develop a plan without sort of fear or favor. And that was the main reason that I got involved in UKMFA, because all of that ethics and informed consent sort of started to go out the window. People were told they had to stay in their homes, even whether they consented or not. And if they didn't consent, then they were arrested. And, this was just unheard of in dealing with a medical emergency, however severe. So I was shocked at what happened. And then what really cemented it was the talk that vaccines should be mandatory and that people should be injected whether they wanted injections or not. And I could see the logic for it. If it really did prevent death and illness from, if everybody was injected, if that was true, then there would be some argument for saying, yes, everyone must get it, but everyone, you'd share that with the idea with everybody, and not everyone would want to do it. But so if you get a situation where you impose it on people and tell them they can't have a job without it, or they can't, and that change in the way that health and prevention was treated, how it transformed from 2020 through 2021, where it was sort of optional, to 2022, when they wanted to force all healthcare workers to have vaccines. That change happened in a sort of stepwise form, and I was horrified. And so it's been a real privilege. My joy as a GP was always about helping people, listening to their stories. As Nicky said, it's 90% of the diagnosis is about listening to people, and we do far too little listening to others. And listening and then formulating and understanding where they're coming from, listening to people who are behaving in exactly the opposite way. And what's been really strange is the fact we're not allowed to talk to each other about these things. And you think, well, this is really odd. I've never been in a world where you're not allowed to talk to people who have opposite views to me. And that, so all those things have been part of my journey. And the joy of the Autonomy Hotline has been that I'm actually talking with one person in another part of the country who's got a problem, with their hospital, or with their GP, or with their surgery, or with their, with the care that they're getting, or talking to somebody whose father's been taken away, and all these issues which come up, which are going on day in, day out, is fantastic. And Nicky, one of the things that Nicky said is that when she had her experience with her daughter all those years ago, she wondered if anybody else had been affected by these sort of things. And immediately she knew that there weren't just dozens of people affected, there were tens of thousands affected by the way that doctors and social workers and police and justice systems and so on had bullied people into doing what the system wanted them to be done. And I realized that I had been a part of that. I had done my share of bullying. I'd forced people to do things they didn't really want to do because I had authority. And so part of my amends has been to sort of say, look, actually, I did this. And it also means I can go alongside other people. I can go alongside social workers and see where they're coming from. I understand their fear. I understand they don't want to be accused of another Victoria Climbié, or literally all these pressures that are on people. It's not one-sided at all. But one of the main things that happen when people are in fear is they start putting pressure, control, coercion on others. And when you see that, it's a case of lifting that fear and releasing that fear. And that's been such a joy working in this way.
Yeah, it really has. I think just want to add to that. The tagline is resisting coercion in health and social care, and that's for the hotline. And we've been pulled up a few times. Why do you pull that? You've got an agenda. You shouldn't be doing. It's really interesting that people will pick up on that, and they tend to be the most controlling individuals. Really interesting. But actually, the research it is based on research. Coercion is a toxin to good professional relationships. If you use coercive power, if you're having to use coercive power, it undermines and reduces that relationship, so it's unworkable. The whole point of being in a professional relationship is you can trust and work with that individual. You just can't. It's you put up a facade instead, and you cannot effectively bring any solution in that matrix if you've got coercion in there, and that was the evidence pulled up from the research. So the whole purpose is to be centered on what the research showed, and that is to reduce the coercion involved by just being there and listening and changing the dynamics. And it's been absolutely profound in most cases.
And that coercion, of course, can be very subtle, and in any abusive relationship, that's actually, it can be used in a very subtle but effective and quite nasty way. So are there specific definitions of coercion within the medical sphere, or and also are there specific definitions of ethics actually in the medical sphere, or is this something that's kind of accepted or should be accepted practice which is then ignored?
Oh, which one do you want to take, John?
But they're both really big, aren't they?
A really big question. So I think there is an accepted general definition of coercion is to sort of use force or pressure to do something that someone doesn't want to do. I've got it technically written down somewhere, but that's in a summary. Is to use sort of force or compulsion or pressure to compel somebody else with less power to do something that you want them to do. A general sort of a definition of ethics is I can sort of say that where you have morals, which is the inner compass, I guess, ethics is more the spoken, outwardly wrestling match, I guess, of doing what's right in society. That's a Nicky version of the definition. So the ethical approach would be something that is more commonly agreed, whereas your own moral compass would be, something you might disagree with, and it might be something that society agrees with as a whole, but you might object. That your moral compass might change things. So that there is that divide with a group of people that may have disagreed with the vaccine, and the general consensus is that vaccines are great. That is probably one way to look at that definition. However, that the testing ground is bringing the morals and views of the minority into the bigger picture, which is ethical as well. And that wasn't done. That was annihilated, and that's where it became unethical. So that's just my sort of view of what was going on.
Okay. John, did you want to add anything there, or do you think it's been nicely covered?
Definitions myself.
So you look at the law, you look at ethics, you look at abusive behaviour. Just reading on your website, advocacy, law, medical treatment, ethics, human rights, family life, parenting, psychology, counselling and natural health. There's a swathe of things that you're dealing with there. Yeah. I mean, did you want to take each of those maybe in turn and maybe give us some examples of where you step in? I mean, maybe starting with the advocacy.
Okay, so when I obviously go back to the research, this is where it all comes down to. People were bringing stories of medical issues, which is what I thought I was going to hear. So that you come to research with an expectation, you've got to be prepared to be challenged by what you're paradigm is. But people are bringing other things as well. So I didn't know anything about mental health assessments, for example, that the courts could order. So you're dealing with like different elements of psychology, or weaponization of potential psychology that might not even be there. You know, domestic abuse came in, as I've said already, and you might get disability in a parent, and you might get mental health in parents, but you might also have autism in a child. You might have a grief or a loss that's, you know, sent a cascade of other things. There's a whole manner of different outcomes. Maternity care can have one issue and then something can come up later on. I'm trying to think of the other things. We have a parenting expert, so different aspects of parenting comes into the cases. People's own sort of inner experiences of childhood then can filter into what is expected when you become a parent. Other family dynamics, we've got sort of end of life care and things like that happen. You might have a family situation which goes to family court, but they might also be caring for an elderly loved one. And I think the key thing is that life is messy. And if we try and deal with advocacy in a linear approach, we will miss key factors, which means that our plans don't work.
Right.
We need to take on board the whole situation so that things, you know, are carefully weighed up. You take the whole picture or you get no picture, is basically one of the messages I have. If you listen carefully enough, you unpick the different layers of coercion, but also their environmental issues, the housing, job status, other status in their own local area, and the neighbours might be calling social services. You know, it is a whole like list of things that go on, because you know, you just can't take the one thing. You get mental health advocacy, you get patient advocacy, you get family court peer parent advocacy, you get a whole range of domestic abuse advocacy, but nobody actually, from what I can understand, actually covers it in totality. And I think that's probably the strength of the hotline, is that by covering it all and looking at where the coercive power lies in a messy case, undoubtedly they usually have various overlapping, you know, complexities. I don't think we've had many cases at all where there's been only one or two layers. There's been usually 4 or 5. And by using the team of experts such as John Rogers for the medical, we have a legal consultant for the family law stuff, we have, you know, various people involved. You can go, right, what's your view on this? What's your view? And then layer them up and decide, well, this is the best strategy to go on. So that's how our advocacy works. So we have this team of specialists, and we have our volunteers, and we talk, we communicate with each other. We ask, you know, for support where it needs. We might have more than one advocate who can help in a case. And yeah, does that help? Is that enough?
I think it does, because it probably covers all of the other subjects as well, in the sense that that's where it all comes from, doesn't it? So if you're resisting coercion in, as you say, health and social care, but does that also extend to, you know, if someone is coercing someone in a natural health environment, or in any other environment, do you get involved with that too, or does it tend to be just with the NHS, or within a local authority social care environment?
It's a good question. Well, on occasion, I think we've had one or two which might be considered more natural health. Very rarely. The whole premise of natural health is that it's freely chosen, whereas the NHS, it often isn't. Often you're forced to accept certain things the way they are, whereas natural health is, you know, you tend to pay for it privately, therefore it's up to you whether you want to or not, and the person has more time for you. So very rarely have we had to do anything outside of that, and I fully support the natural health movement for everything it's doing to support people who may not be getting the support they need in the NHS. So in terms of NHS and courts and medical, you know, we have people who've gone through court cases for forced vaccination and other forced medical treatment, and it creates massive problems. So yeah, most of the coercive power is when someone does not have their own power and consider themselves victims. Sometimes it's because they haven't got treatment. So we've had a couple of cases where they've been refused diagnosis or treatment or assessments or something, or there's been some confusion about what's going on, so they've cancelled any further help, which has led to extreme distress in a few clients. And some we've successfully resolved, making sure they've got the treatment by challenging, masks or other limitations or, other restrictions. So again, talking about this moral compass, do we have to violate that in order to just tick a box? No, actually, we can challenge, we can help, we can assist them and give people what the treatment and support they need. So I think that generally this is about the power imbalance, and I think there are times when perhaps if there was a case that I might not step in if that power imbalance wasn't there. My concern is always to step in when someone is definitely the weaker party, not when they already have the power. I would not advocate for somebody who is likely to have a lot of power already over someone's weaker. I think that's a violation of the principles of the Autonomy Hotline.
Okay, so John, how would a case come to you? I mean, can you give me an example of how something would filter through from someone first phoning the hotline to it?
I've never been on the actual hotline itself, so I get referrals from Nicky and the team. Usually they come through on WhatsApp or to say, have you got space? You've got a couple of that are taking a lot of your time at the moment.
Sorry.
And it's fine. And I so particular, an example would be someone who was finding that they couldn't have the a simple procedure with that they basically had a pacemaker and they needed it to be replaced, but the way that they were responding to the hospital and the way the hospital responded to him, it was just being cancelled. It was not happening. So all that needed to happen there was a phone call from me to the hospital. I spoke to the consultant secretary and I said, look, this is the situation. I can't really believe that you're saying that this person cannot have this treatment just because they've said this. And they said, well, yes, it's our policy. We don't, do that. I said, I just wanted to know, could I take your name? Just, could you just explain? Because obviously they are now at risk of dropping dead. And it just seems ridiculous to me. And I don't know how it would sound out, if they do. And they say, oh, I'm so sorry. I think I shouldn't talk to me. Talk to my consultant. I'll get the consultant to phone you. So, okay, thank you very much. Consultant never phoned back, but the patient was phoned straight away to say your procedure's booked in for next Wednesday. So, literally all I did was just use a bit of power of the, retired GP, bit confused, didn't really know why. The patient's probably misunderstanding the processes. Patient wasn't misunderstanding the process at all. They had rigid rules and they were sticking by them. And so just by questioning those rigid rules and the absolute stupidity of it became clear to them and they immediately reversed it. But often patients and clients and don't have the ability to voice those things with others. And I don't feel under any, I feel like an equal to professionals. I'm no better and no worse than any of the professionals I talk to. I have done the things that I feel that they're now doing to the patients and the clients that I'm seeing. So I feel it's, I've been where they've been. So I don't need to, I don't need to prove to them that that's wrong. I can say, look, I understand completely where you're coming from. However, there is another point of view, and it's not about saying this person's a victim, this person's a perpetrator. It's actually bringing it up so that they're both on an equal footing. And suddenly they both realize that there is an exchange, there's a communication, there's an action that can happen of equals rather than this huge disparity which there was before. So it's that was an exceptional one where it took one phone call. Some of them I sort of first met in July last year, and I'm still in sort of intermittent correspondence and phone calls with them and supporting them. But the beauty of it, even if the situation when you first hear about a situation which sounds awful, and it is awful, and it's full of coercion, full of damage, you think that the solution is going to be to resolve that. But what I found is it's often not. It's actually about helping the person to understand what they want to do about that situation. So I want to just go in like a bull in a china shop, tackle the solicitor who's a pig, and and literally go in, combative, because I know that they're in the wrong, in my opinion. But actually, that's not necessarily what is needed. What is actually needed is someone to say, I'm with you. I understand your situation. Yeah, it does seem like the solicitor's being a bit unfair. What do you want to do about it? And it just brings a totally different relationship between me and the client. But also, I think it changes the relationship between the client and the solicitor that's causing them problems or whatever. There's a beauty to it, which is not. In fact, it rarely is what I think it needs to be at the start. And that's been a real learning for me.
When you approach those solicitors or doctors, do they know you as the Autonomy Hotline, or do they know you as just John who's helping them out?
Yeah, I'm a little bit sneaky, because I say, when I'm speaking to secretaries, I say it's Dr. Rogers, I'm a retired GP, and I'm helping the Autonomy Hotline. So I basically... Dr. Rogers is what, so people's brains immediately think, oh, we need to take this seriously. And it's wrong, but it is true. And so it's just, and I immediately say I'm a retired GP. I'm no longer on the medical register. I was briefly on the medical register for a couple of years during COVID, but I'm not now. But so it's just it's a way in to appointment systems at hospitals, a way into GP surgeries, it's a way in, and I don't abuse it. I don't pretend that I'm another GP or anything like that. I always sort of am very clear, almost in the first sentence, that I'm a retired GP. But being a retired GP means when you're talking to a social worker or talking to a hospital consultant or another GP, they do understand that you have a bit of experience which they recognize, and I recognize their experience. So it's a shorthand way of building an equal relationship with other professionals who don't always respect their patients and their clients, in my opinion.
Well, no, it's probably true, Nicky, isn't it, of your other advocates, that it's the same. If you've got the background and you can speak the language, then you're going to get somewhere. And
yeah,
and you
so
can't
I think
have the wall pulled over your eyes either, can you?
Yeah, and I think language and communication is a massive part of what we do, is leveling, that playing field, creating a bridge between the two worlds. So in the natural health world, people talk about sort of common law or different aspects, and sometimes this creates issues in that you're not communicating with the same language as the other side, and therefore you're treated in a different way. So so John Rogers was just saying, he'd say Dr. Rogers. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think that's actually a benefit if you've got a position that you can play straight away. Brilliant. Sometimes it's useful to have no position. Sometimes that's useful for me. I might be called an ethicist or founder of the hotline, and sometimes just a peer advocate or contact or support worker, in fact. And actually having no influence gives me a little bit of a chance to be in meetings that I might be sidelined from. So it really depends on the case, on the nuances, on who's involved. And sometimes we put in star players, if you like, with massive titles, and other times it's like, no, let's just put the volunteer in this one because they might have a chance to get in. It really is very, very interesting looking at all the different angles and all the different game tactics that you can, and you have to use them, unfortunately, because you are trying to get to a point of that level, like John was talking about. If you can speak their language and look at what they are looking at and what they want, you're more likely to get some ability to maneuver a case in the right direction. It's fascinating and very psychological as well.
So how do your clients find you? So we've looked at, well, I've mentioned all the various areas in which you cover, but how do people know that you're there? And how busy are you, I guess, at the moment?
Oh gosh, amazingly busy right now. So I don't need to advertise, and I tend not to. So I'm looking for volunteers as well. So if people want to join us as a volunteer, that would help a lot. You're more than welcome to come trial our training package. We do sort of talks and we do meetings and various things through the year. I think word of mouth really has been the main one. People know that I exist, and particularly the natural health movement. As I said, I've been part of it for a long time, and I avoid advertising when we're really stretched. But there are times when I see particular cases online, I might mention, "Oh, give us a call," and really that has been the main one. Podcasts like this, I've done a few of them. I work alongside Nicky Stark from When Push Comes to Shove, and she gets cases on maternity issues as well as other things, and she sends them my way as well. So we have organizations like yourself that forward me various things, and it's grown from there. So initially, when I was asking people, how did you find me, I knew the name of the individual and I knew the name of the contact, and said, oh yeah, it's through so and so. I'm like, okay, fine. And then it was I saw you on the light paper, or they mentioned names that I actually no longer recognize. I'm thinking, okay, so now we've grown to an extent that I can't follow it now, which is exciting, but also quite nerve-wracking as well.
Great! Wow.
Yeah.
So you're banged out with work, and and you need more volunteers, I guess, from again a variety of disciplines as well. Then.
Yeah, so we would probably really benefit from someone with a mental health specialism, actually, and probably another family law specialism, anyone from nursing. So those kind of specialisms would be fantastic right now. But we have space for others too. And volunteers, I think the key element is really just to be able to listen and not be put off by systems, really. And we have a very friendly team, and we don't have because we're quite organic at the moment, because we're still kind of learning the ropes. We don't have very solid, rigid structures in place. Now, that could be a weakness, but it also could be a strength, because it's not the same as what you'd get in a professional field. So it's quite fluid at the moment. It might come to a point where we set things down, but it's not. So if you like the sound of working in a very flexible field where you are not, I seek autonomy for my staff, and I let them get on with it. I expect them to be able to be there for somebody, and pretty much that's it. If you have any questions, come to our core team of specialists. Other than that, you have autonomy. The Autonomy Hotline, it's about how you work. So I try and give as much freedom in the way we think and the way we do things at the moment, and a time will come where that has to be more rigid, but it's still early days. So if you like the sound of that, freedom to be you and to work with people in this capacity of just guiding them, this is a great opportunity, and you are completely in control of what hours you want to give and how many clients you want. It's very, very fluid. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I think that's it really.
Well, it gives you a very agile way of working, I guess, isn't it? So because you need to be responsive and at the right time, and probably at short notice, I guess, as well sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of the hotline is that we will try and deal with emergencies as quickly as we can, even if we're fully rammed. Me, Sarah, Lauren, the team, I know John will often take an emergency call pretty quick and deal with it as quickly as we can. And the helpline is always there, so that if you have even if we can't allocate an advocate, you're able to get some help on the phone from somebody. And that I think the phone line actually is probably our strongest asset. It's been a fantastic service. There's a telecoms company that I purchased the hotline with, and that has been just a huge asset. And I can divert that number to any phone in the UK. So I say to my team, you can be out walking the dog, just make sure you carry pen and paper with you. You can do anything, your normal life, but you'll see the hotline number come up on your phone, and just, even if you're busy, take a message, we can get back to them. And I know we're not able to deal with every single phone number that's come our way, but I think 90% of those we do try and get. So, if you don't get us the first time, try again, because you will get us eventually.
So I know from experience, because I actually used to put them in years ago, these telephone numbers, they're not the cheapest things in the world, and you've also got, I guess, other expenses to cover as well. So how do you cover your expenses? How do you raise your money?
It's been a really tough few years, actually. We've had a little bit come in. We do ask for contributions towards court case work, paperwork, meetings and things, and we don't always get it because the cost of living and the clients we have are at the bottom of the ladder right now. So the people we tend to work with have no status in their lives whatsoever. And to be honest, for me as a Christian, as a someone who I find that a massive privilege, to not charge people for those services. But we ask when we can. A lot of time we don't. It has been extremely challenging. So we have sought, various funds. We've got a bid writer. We've managed to secure that. It's been very tough in that it's been a massive delay. However, I have some good news in that our first bid might be successful, might be coming soon. So I'm really pleased about that. Yeah, I know, John's really excited. It's been very hard. We have had a few donations from very kind people, and it's ticked over just enough to manage to maintain it. Not ideal, but the future looks good right now. So, but support with particular cases for individuals that are facing court and we need to actually pay for someone legal because that's just the way it is in that particular case. Or if we've got a particular issue that we need funding, our Teachable platform where we keep the training material, that's quite expensive. So that's our biggest expense. We have Zoom and various things like that as well. There are things on the pipeline like needing an office space because we're growing too big. That kind of stuff is going to need funding. So any help with any of that, and that it's going to extremely good cause, very, very welcome. We've managed just to survive.
Okay.
Just, I say that, I emphasize that, and I take very, very, very little, and it's been a tough couple of years, I have to say.
Well, there's a very nice bright, I think it's pink donate button on your website, so that people can go there and help you out. Again, just a reminder for people that are watching, the Autonomy Hotline is actually at theautonomyhotline.org. And there's a nice pink donate button there that people can click on, and also ways to contact Autonomy Hotline and join and become recruited if necessary, which is wonderful. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to go through? We've been talking actually quite a while now. I can't believe how quickly it goes. These subjects are so interesting. The time always flies by.
I think if anyone's interested, I actually had a major opportunity earlier this year. I think it was January this year where I actually spoke to the FDA.
Wow.
That was quite incredible, actually. They had, was it Steve Kirsch or something, had put a note out saying that they were having a public hearing. The FDA were doing public hearing. And so I contacted them. Apparently they had like 21,000 people respond, and they picked 16 randomly, and I was one of those. There is a link on Twitter, I think, where that talk is found. It gives a really good summary of our views and what we do on the hotline in terms of COVID vaccination, particularly, and how the licensing. It was talking about licensing products, but if something is opened to other people abusing it, that's kind of where the problem lies. So once you license a product, then it creates problems for those that want to weaponize that. And that was something that it was a different dynamic, different approach to what most of the other speakers were talking about. So that was a real honor and a privilege. I don't know what else to talk about, really. Some of the other podcasts I've worked with the World Council for Health and People's Health Alliance. So I'm well connected with a lot of other groups that know of us and done some podcasts with them.
Well, it's very important, John, isn't it, that all these organisations are staying in touch and keeping together.
Yeah, I mean it is. There's so many groups that have flourished really over the last 2 or 3 years, and sort of recognising some of the most important things, which is relationships, equal relationships, loving relationships, and addressing early when things aren't going right, and if things aren't going right, that needs to be addressed. It doesn't need to be brushed under the carpet, doesn't need to be ignored. If even the worst relationships can be mended, and that's the beauty of it. And it's been a real privilege to work with Nicky and indeed work with both organisations, because both have got a heart of gold and want to transform the lives of people. So thank you.
Well,
I think our vision to finally finish, I think our vision would be to try and have an advocate across every hospital in the UK, so that when emergency happens or when there's a crisis in a family, instead of necessarily straight referral to social work, they have access to a support service that can be a different voice in their care. And that's really where the vision is, so that if another COVID thing happened, or if another, who knows what was going to happen after what we've experienced, and with the crises of cost of living and poverty and all these things happening around the corner, being able to have that bridge right on your doorstep for everyone to be able to access, that is where I'm going.
I do wonder, actually, is it an if or is it a when?
Hopefully. Someone also said Autonomy Hotline International, but it's a bit big at the moment, I think. But we do have cases which cover UK and overseas, and it becomes complicated. So having a similar service that is much more broader in terms of overseas could be beneficial. But my brain can barely take what's going on in the UK right now, so I'm but I think it's a great idea. So yes, hopefully when seeing this rolled out as a model for good success across the UK, we've got a few hurdles to overcome, and I think one of them is my own kind of brain and space and capacity for being able to do this. But I have to do that inner work on myself as well as being able to deliver. And at the moment, it's a bit big, but we'll carry on. Gonna do it.
I often say that we might be small pieces in the puzzle, but it's very nice to be a piece in the puzzle. At least we've made it that far. And maybe we can fix all this eventually.
The puzzle's not complete until we're all in place.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else you want to add, John, before we close?
No, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. And yes, and I can't emphasize enough how good the organisation is, how valuable this service is to people, and press that pink donate button.
You're too kind, John. I couldn't have done it without my amazing team. I feel like totally unable a lot of the time, and then I have these amazing people like John and Sarah and Lauren, Sandy, Fraser is another one, just all these wonderful people that just lift my spirits up and just make it possible. So it is a team, definitely a team effort. Thank you.
Well, that's wonderful. No, I definitely feel the love. Thank you very much. And I'll close now just by, I guess I should also ask that when people are donating to your organisation, perhaps they could also just pop over to ours as well and just give us a little hand so we can keep these broadcasts going and keep our services going too, so we can all pull together and fight back the way we're fighting. Bless your hearts. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you again. All right. Take care. There you go. Bye-bye.